Hi everyone, this is Andrea Brunel. This is my final presentation for building online learning communities at Bay Path University. My subject today is engaging difficult students online. Some common issues with regard to engaging a difficult student or what could make a student more difficult could be a student that doesn't understand the norms of an online classroom, a student that questions either your judgment or ideas or other students' judgment or ideas as a pattern of their behavior, a student that can be demanding or angry, belligerent, a student that's behaving in a negative way, a student that expects special treatment from you, the instructor, or a student that is just absent. Either they're consistently absent or they're inconsistent with their attendance and participation. So an example of a student that is not understanding the norms could be a student that types all of their discussions in all capital letters, so it looks like they're yelling. Or a student that uses texting languages like the letter U and the letter R for the words you and are. Or a student that enters discussions without any sort of greetings or salutations. Students that question your abilities and will contradict you in class or contradict other students and do it in a really negative ways. A student that is incredibly demanding and wants you to do lots of stuff for them or ask you to do multiple things that are sort of outside what you consider to be reasonable. Students that make unreasonable requests for extensions or as a pattern of behavior ask for lots and lots of extensions, or the student who is either just absent from the class or is really inconsistent with their participation in your class. So the thing you have to keep in mind as we're thinking about difficult students is really remember that just because a student has individual differences, you shouldn't consider them to be difficult. You need to make sure that you consider their individual differences as you begin instructing them. So just like you would with an on-the-ground class, it's important to understand good pedagogy, things like meeting students where they are. So it is possible that if you're teaching an elective class, that you may take a peek at what all the majors of your students are. That might help you sort of understand where they might be or where they're likely to be with the content knowledge, or surveying them for some pre-existing knowledge at the beginning of class. Making sure that you use universal design principles for your class, making sure that you're both presenting information in multiple different formats, and you're also taking in examples of student learning in multiple different modalities and giving students the option to be able to learn and express their learning in different ways. Knowing that there's going to be a big difference between students who have taken lots of online classes and students that are first-time online learners. They could be really nervous and just feel like they're being thrown in the deep end, and that may prevent them from being really engaged in the class. And also keep in mind that there could be cultural differences between their students, and make sure that your expectations of their behavior are not in conflict with whatever their cultural identity is. So some strategies that you can use for students that are exhibiting some of those difficult kinds of behaviors that I mentioned first. We'll start with the student that's not understanding the behavioral norms in an online class. Stick with the university policies and make sure that you refer the student to the university policies if they are not quite getting what the norms are. You should also be modeling expected behavior. The example of using sort of really informal language and texting kind of language, don't do that yourself if you're expecting students not to do it either. And always keep in mind that you should be warm but professional with the students and help guide them, because it's likely that they're not sure what to do, as opposed to being defiant. But we can talk about those students a little bit later. The student that is questioning your judgment or ideas or those of other students, think about if you're being the one contradicted, instead of directly responding to the student, reaffirm your position with your answer without going head to head with that student. Reaffirm the answer, and you could even couch it with, not everybody in the class agrees, but this is the answer to that question. Make sure, again, you're kind but firm. And also look for value in the criticism. It is possible, if you peel back the layers of the onion in whatever that questioning or the judgment of the ideas is, that there is some truth to that, and a little bit of self-reflection may help you see that. When you have a very angry or demanding student, one of the best things you can do is, when you receive that communication or you see that post, instead of immediately responding to it and just hitting that keyboard hard, step away, pause and reflect, take a deep breath, and then come back. And that's when you can be kind but firm in your response. Also, reread whatever it is, because it is quite possible that it's just your interpretation of what they have written. Remember, we're missing, when we have just written communication, we're missing all those verbal and nonverbal cues that can help us interpret what somebody's saying. So it could be your interpretation as opposed to the student really being angry or demanding. And if there's a student that has a pattern of these kinds of behaviors, or an extreme version of, even if it's just once, have a direct conversation with them. There are very few students that you will not be able to resolve the issue with if you have direct communication with them. Sometimes just being very, very personal and being kind and firm but direct in a one-to-one conversation, you can help figure out why this student might be angry. I would go back to, every behavior has a reason. So if a student is acting demanding or angry, there's probably a reason for that. And having the conversation, you can probably help them to get their needs met and diffuse some of the anger. For the student that expects special treatment, make sure that you stick to the university policies, and make sure that the student is also aware of those policies. Again, being warm and professional. And also, there may be some things that you might be able to do for certain students, but explain that there are certain things you can do when time permits. Things like a student who asks for being able to turn in multiple copies of a draft. They might be really insecure about their writing abilities, or the way that they're looking at the content. If you have time to do that, be upfront with them and let them know when you can do it and when you're not able to do it. And also be clear that this isn't an always, every time kind of thing, but that you understand that they're struggling with this particular assignment, and you can then do those extra things for them, sort of on a case-by-case basis. Something else that could also help you with students who are expecting special treatment is if you have set up some frequently asked questions that you can refer them back to, so they can understand what the expectations of the instructor are going to be, and you don't have to keep going back to saying, no, I can't do it. You can send them to the FAQs. A student that is either a student that just hasn't been showing up, or a student who has been very spotty with their attendance and with their work, can be really difficult. So let's say you have a student who has been really inconsistent with their attendance. So if the student becomes belligerent because they haven't been able to keep up, that may be sort of the behavior that they're exhibiting because they're very stressed. So you should ignore the emotion in their correspondence and answer their questions. If this is in a public discussion, follow up with a separate email to them, and perhaps offer a one-to-one conversation, either a video or telephone conversation with them, to find out why they're behaving the way they're behaving. You know, what is the reason? And if it's because they have not been consistent in their attendance, be, again, warm but firm and professional, and let them know that your course is going to be really difficult to for them to complete unless they start having consistently better attendance. And also ask them what's been standing in their way from having consistently good attendance. Again, stick to the university policies with regard to attendance. They can be your friend, and that way you're not being arbitrary with any student. And you may want to consider beginning your class with an online survey. And Zellner actually suggests asking for a secondary email address, sort of like an emergency contact that a school would ask for in case they're not answering their school emails. So you can make sure you can touch base with them to find out why they haven't been participating. It's also important that you know where and when to get support. So make sure that you know how to get technical support and you're able to let the students know how to get technical support. Some of the difficult behaviors you may see in a classroom may be because of technical issues. It could be frustration with technology. It could be just lack of familiarity with the technology or the particular learning management system. Know how the university wants you to proceed when you need to contact a student advisor, and then and then make sure that you do that, know the process, and contact student advisors when it's appropriate. I would suggest, based on my research and my experience, that you always contact the student first, let them know that you're concerned, reach out to them a couple of times, document it, and then if you don't hear back from them, or you do hear back from them and you think that there are some issues brewing there, make sure you contact the student advisor through whatever the early warning system is you have at your university. Also, know where to refer students for academic support. Sometimes students can be difficult to engage because they just don't know how to do certain things. For instance, a new student to online learning may not know how to use learning management systems, so they need technology support. Another student may be just new to being a college student, and this may be their first experience using APA format. So knowing how to refer students to the writing center is also important. So it's both about technical support and academic support, especially in the area of writing. Here are my references. Thank you very much for watching and listening. I hope that you found this informative. And again, thanks. Bye-bye.